If you can, man, HNO, help Nash out. Hit that like button, force us into the algorithms. Man, y'all say y'all don't like the other people that's doing that reporting on it. Hey, come on over here, bro. It's Seti Nash. I think I'm going to be the Rock, and goddamn, Traplo Ross going to be Stone Cold. It is what it is. But let's get straight to it. So the judge held a moment of silence for Dolly Parton before the jury came in and said she was such a nice person, the world divided. The lawyers for the feds said that the head detective is on vacation, but he'll be back on Monday. That's the dude we had yesterday. And I'm going to make a statement about him. Just hold on. Diddy told the feds, Jam told the feds that Diddy is the leader of Tay-Town and that Durk was mad at O-Block for not sliding for Vine, and they let him die and they didn't protect him, and say Lil Durk paid for some O-Block Airbnbs to go to war in Atlanta, which if that would have happened, bro, I'm going to be honest, it would have been, the Atlanta cats would have been pissed, and that would have led to some more shit. And I think that's originally why the feds say they got involved, because they figure this is somebody who was going to have some shit happen to him. That's just my opinion. The judge say, you can let that in. Everybody was like, wait, what? So Diddy's lawyer basically says, he argues about that, but basically it comes in and the judge says something about leading the witness, because what happened was the federal lawyer said, oh, I'm going to be leading him into his questioning because I want to keep it inside the box. Everybody decided, and I'm going to be honest with you, the lawyers kind of, I ain't going to lie, they wasn't truthful on this one. I'm going to be fair. The freaking federal lawyer said, in order for me to have, this is me paraphrasing, in order for me to have Diddy say the right things without having a mistrial or saying something, that can't be basically heard and unrung, I'm going to have to literally make sure that I lead him how to answer the question. And they lost their damn minds, bro. Hell nah. The damn, Brian still flat out his mouth said, I'm not going to let the prosecutor lead the witness. And then the federal attorney was like, bro, what? Like, no, I'm doing this because this is how he's supposed to testify. And basically, they start talking about what I talked about yesterday and today. The federal lawyers are leading their witnesses. If I point out something that is exhibit, let's say 01, and you say, yeah, but I did say, no, that's exhibit 2. And you say, yeah, that means you weren't even paying attention to this shit. You're just agreeing with what I'm telling you. It's the equivalent of me saying, y'all remember that time that I did this? Instead of saying, on this day, this happened. And then you tell me what happened. That's leading your witness. So Farmby is 100% a token black. He said he spent 7 years working in Chicago. But basically, Jason Smith is the one who booked all the flights. So he bring up an old text message from Lil Durk. And it's funny, they keep calling Lil Durk blood, but this is their slang. This is like the Memphis cats calling everybody cuz. So Durk tell them they need flights blood, and basically talking about Booney Mo and Didi and Christopher Wright. And then they bring up Quando Rondo's homie. And then Jason Smith sends the King Von diss. And then they say, wait on the get back. And then they bring up the Angela Yee interview from 11/6, right? And the damn token lawyer, Fed agent, he ain't even a lawyer. The Fed agent basically say, oh, that's Quando Rondo. They not calling Quando Rondo Tyquane Bowman at all for a moment. And then they bring up that he's in a Rolls Royce and this was done 4/22 or 4/12/2021. And they show a fake Lil Durk, 14 seconds in the interview, and a fake Durk disrespect. But what they don't show you is Quando Rondo killing Lil Durk in that video. And that's massively important because that's what the hell happened. So Jason Smith said, Lil Tim being arrested for King Von's death, and Durk replies, I knew it. Then there's more messages. Lil Durk saying, bro, I'm hurt 3 hours after Lil Tim is arrested. Then there's a screenshot You don't know who sent the damn screenshot, but the screenshot essentially was of Lil Durk and King Von, and it says, if Smirk want a nigga dead, then that nigga dead. On O, you know how we coming. If I got it, you got it. And when I ain't have it, same nigga from the back. And you had it when I ain't have it. Same nigga from back when. If you ever hear we fell out, that's an effing lie. He's one of my top 5, alive or dead. And that's what basically Lil Durk was looking at, right? So then they bring up Lil Tim's bond. If y'all want to look up the bond number, it's y'all want to look up the docket, it's 20CP195568. And then it basically brings up that Lil Tim had a bond, and that bond was on 3/24/2021. Then Lil Tim got a $100,000 bond. And then June 5th, June 5th, 2021, they decided not to prosecute. And that's going to become important a little bit later on. So they start talking about the second count, the read of basically saying the judge makes the rules, and then the feds pull a fast one. They purposely don't read something that's on there. They just read that Lil Tim was on home confinement. So what they're doing, what the feds are establishing, or trying to establish, and I think they did an all right job, is they're still throwing in the Vicar murder with all this shit. So what they're saying is basically they known for going and slide and getting addresses and all that, because that's supposed to be the overall thing. But there's a problem with that later on that gets exposed. So they basically talk about Lil Durk. They talk about Lil Tim being on home confinement. Then they bring Durk's phone. The FBI reviewed the phone. Then the lawyer says Lil Durk sent messages with Lil Tim's address, which is not even true. But there's a message that basically says Lil Tim's address, check it now. She can only check for the addy because he's on house arrest, all this stuff, right? And it's done in 4/21/2021. What people fail to realize is Lil Tim had a curfew. After that curfew, he's on house arrest, but we'll get into that. So basically, there's another screenshot that say they did that fast. These dudes are asleep. I'm about to wake them up. Yeah, she said 3/30/2021. And it's all images. It's a screenshot of Quando Rondo from 5/3, so May 3rd, 2021. It's an image. It doesn't even say who sent it or who received it. It just shows Quando Rondo and Waycross for his May 5th Waycross show. And then basically it's still another screenshot of a whole entire other show. Then they bring up exhibit 237 of Jason Smith, Lil Durk's Redman goddamn video from January 2021 from iCloud. And I'm gonna be honest, if they create a phone that allows y'all to use y'all memories and all that shit, memory sticks from now on, don't get iCloud, don't get none of these clouds, bro. They are screwing you the hell over. So Lil Durk is looking at his phone, looking at articles. That's what the still shot is showing. Then it shows Lil Durk as the shooter and the driver. So Lil Durk hops out, he kills the person in the video, and then he takes the mask off to reveal that it's Durk. Then Durk hops in the van. Then the masked driver reveals he's Durk too. In my opinion, that video means I'll do it myself. He didn't have nobody else in that video. He didn't have a bunch of people in the video. It was nothing but Durk in a lookalike of who doesn't even make sense when the goddamn token said what he said, because I'm going to destroy that in a moment. So they basically say the feds sneaked this in there. And they say that Lil Durk stalked the person. Obviously, Brian still object, and then that objection was sustained. And then they say the video was never released. I wrote in my notes that makes 0 sense. And then page 4 is victim. They can't infer who it is, but they want it brought in. And the Florida lawyer looks up. The Florida lawyer says it looks like Quando Rondo, and then they bring in the picture. And then Brian still says he's leading. Then the token basically says that the dude is looking like Quando Rondo, but dressed like Lil Tim. Dumbass. That was supposed to be Lil Tim being killed. But they lied on that part and tried to say it was Quando Rondo. Quando Rondo was wearing in the story, he was wearing a full jumpsuit. Lil Tim had on the exact same clothes that you would be wearing that he was wearing when he killed King Von. And the dude's hair looked just like Lil Tim. In the video, in the story video, Quando Rondo had his head cut. He had a haircut. So the Fed lawyer was flat out lying. So there's that part. But they can't say that it doesn't look like Quando Rondo, that it's actually King Von. I mean, it's actually Lil Tim for a reason. And we're going to break that in just a moment. So they bring up in the story photo, Lil Tim was never shot or slid on, is what I put in my notes. And that shit gets brought up in a moment. So the federal lawyer brings in the TMZ video again. It's at this point in time, it's been basically cumulative all over again, because the damn the damn Redman video wasn't shot after goddamn Quando Rondo and Lil Pop got shot at and Lil Pop ultimately died. So that didn't make any sense. They bring up don't book no fights under me again. And then Jason Smith sent the message one day after from Fuchsia's TV about Quando Rondo and them basically getting shot at in LA. And then it says Quando Rondo and his crew was shot in West Hollywood, all this BS. And then they bring up Duty Low. And Duty Low, bro, what the hell? Duty Low sends a text to Lil Durk. And the reason they're bringing this text in is to establish that it's Duty Low's number. And they're trying to show correlation between Duty Low and Lil Durk. They're all trying to do this shit to make it seem like this is how OTF operates. And I know that's going to end up being in closing 100%. That, oh, see, everybody in OTF, they already know to go slide and go do all this shit. But if I'm Brian Steele and Drew Fillon and all this shit, I'm looking at this like these cats were already doing stuff before a video was dropped, before a text message was sent, before any of this crap. So it's not that I had to rap go slide for Von, because cats was already texting they're gonna slide for Von, and that was Slime Light Shorty and Duty Low. And so Duty Low say it need more scenes. He laughs at a reel, but a reel can't bring this up. This is a text between Lil Durk and Duty Low. And Duty Low texts freaking Lil Durk, no. And then they couldn't see the message because it was a freaking reel. They're acting like this was a text message, like of words and all this shit, and it wasn't. It was a reel. And I think stuff like that is just stupid. And this happened the day that Lil Pop had died. No, day after Lil Pop had died. Or 4 hours after he died, my bad. But here's what's insane, and I need everybody to understand this. November 6, 2020. Duty Low and Slime Light Shorty are texting each other. Duty Low say, keep your head on, Slime. I know the pain. I'm with you for life. Drilling about this shit. They talking about drilling and going and sliding on Quando Rondo. And Slime Light Shorty say, I love you, Slime. Duty Low say, love you back, slap. Did November 7, 2020. Slime Light Shorty sends Duty Low a text, say, where you at? Duty Low like, I'm at the crib, call me. Slime Light Shorty literally drops Quando Rondo's number. And then they start talking again on the 18th, like, yo, gang, I know a dude from Savannah who got drops. This him, you want his number? So on 11/9, Duty Low like, hell yeah. So they dropped the number. But here's the funnier part. That happened before a whole lot of shit happened as far as Lil Durk and all this stuff. Lil Durk's Redman video came out months after that. So, so basically there's a text about Jam being a snitch, but Token say, never say, oh, I noted that the Token dude, he never says nigga. He said other people or whatever the hell and all that. But the guy we had that was head investigator for for LAPD, he said nigga a bunch of times in that goddamn courtroom. He was a Mexican. Now we're in California, so, it is what it is. But I just noted that because the black dude didn't say it, but the other dude said it. So there's that part. But he didn't mind dropping words like motherfucker and all these other goddamn words. So they find out basically that there's a thread that's only the family code killer, blood brother, little dude, that's Lil Durk, 30, Duty Low, Loyal, DD Twin, Zoo, and then who else in it is seen as OTF, but it's literally an OTF thread. So they say, Jam just ready to snitch, blood clear as day, blood Patron, he moving different like he a GD. They say Jam said, "What's up? Is y'all effing with him?" And then basically they like Jam finna tell soon. So they think he can break us. On my mouth, for real, Alpo ass nigga at this point, loyal for real, weird ass people. Feds be going to talk to everybody in that mud effort every time. I talk to mud efforts in blood flying straight. As long as we don't break, they can tell them whatever. But mind you, this is to a shit ton of people who ain't did nothing as far as sliding for Vine and none of that shit. So that's where, you know, you're going to get the other cats who are going to say, oh no, that's all about sliding for Vaughn and Diddy Low and these people are there going all crazy and that. No, bro, that's not what that means, bro. So Brian Steele gets on cross. Brian Steele say, you were present at the May 24, 2023 interview. Dude say no. And what happens when Token starts talking to Brian Steele and shit, he's super defensive, but it's funny because the jurors can see this. They can see dude trying to be smart as shit. And he uses this phrase, other cases. And I noted this with Brian Steele, but Brian Steele never said like this case specifically. And that's where I was kind of getting pissed off because dude was throwing Brian Steele off a little bit by saying other cases. But Brian Steele proceeded to still put boot to ass. But I think if Brian Steele would have did this, Brian Steele would have been walking around like the Undertaker after this. If he would have said, I'm talking specifically about this case, Brian Steele would have been around like the damn Undertaker. So basically, Brian Steele say, you remember the Redman video? Dude say, yeah. January 2021. Dude say, yeah. Brian Steele say, who made it? They say Jerry Productions. Dude say, yeah. Brian Steele say, so Quando Rondo dressed as Lil Tim, so you showed the gunfire still. So he made sure the dude, when he showed Lil Durk shooting the gun, he made sure that it showed the fire from the nozzle shooting the dude that actually looked like Lil Tim, but they say it looked like Quando Rondo. It doesn't. It doesn't even have the same haircut. It had Lil Tim's haircut. But because dude lips is a little big, that's why he said that shit. So Brian still like, so did you ever see if it was released? And dude like, nah, I searched everywhere. I searched online, I searched YouTube, I did all of that. So then what ends up happening is they say, did you speak to anybody? Brian still like, did you speak to anybody about the creation of this video or the lyrics or any of this stuff? Token like, no. So Brian still like, so you didn't talk to anybody? No. You didn't talk about who created it? Jerry did it, but not Durk. All right. So then King Von fought Quando Rondo, and mind you, Brian Steele is calling these people by their first and last name. He then drops them as Lil Tim and Quando Rondo after a while, but he starts them off with their damn names. So he says King Von fought Quando Rondo and leaks kills King Von, then calls himself King Tim. Now, Brian Steele says it, but he doesn't say that it's Quando Rondo that's doing this. It's accepted, generally it's accepted that Quando Rondo's people are the ones that's calling him King Tim. But anyways, Brian Steele phrases it basically as a fight, and that, you know, King Von gets killed, and then he says that King Von is being dragged like a piece of trash, and that basically, Quando Rondo is treating King Von like just nothing. And so this dude gonna now say, oh, nah, I can't look into the mindset of Quando Rondo. He say, oh, you can't? So you don't know anybody's mindset but yours. And he like, yeah. He said, so why was the case dropped? The dude say it was self-defense. He says, as a law enforcement expert, show us self-defense in this video. And the dude says this, it was a fight. Anybody could have basically been scared. And Brian Steele says, so that's self-defense. He said, yeah, because what Brian Steele did, which was dope as hell, Brian Steele makes it look like, bruh, it was a fist fight. Lil Pop, they want to throw hands, Lil Pop starts shooting. That's what it looked like. And he literally say, if you look in that video, where the hell this defense even exists, because Quando Rondo wasn't on the ground getting kicked at. If you're on the ground being kicked at by a group of people, then that's attempted murder. You can get charged for attempted murder with that. That never freaking happens. So they bring a red man, and then basically Brian still trying to get dude to admit that he probably did music and all this shit. So Brian Still's like, it's an art that you basically don't like. He said, you ever do music? And the dude just started looking confused and shit, like, what the hell? So then Brian Still says, you brought up Sign Like Shorty and Duty Low messages. You show texts of anybody you want. Lil Durk is hurt. Meaning he's literally talking about the mind frame that I brought up yesterday. It's clear that Lil Durk is depressed in all of this shit that's going on. So he say, you showed a picture of King Von and goddamn Lil Durk. And he say, you're promoting that as your own narrative. Dude say, I wouldn't say that. He says, when grief hits you, are you upset and do things? Durk told people to get a therapist, but you didn't put everything in your evidence. So they struck that, but it's funny because he never brings up the existence of Durk actually texting people, hey bro, y'all need to go get therapy and all this stuff. Then it gets shown that Quando Rondo is bragging about King Von's death and called Lil Tim King Tim. Now, I'm gonna be honest, that shit had never happened. That wasn't what it was, but the way it landed to me, it was like this was accepted that Quando Rondo's people is moving on behalf of Lil Durk, because y'all saying Lil Durk people is moving on behalf of Quando Rondo. So if you take that any other way, all right, but then start saying that shit, well then everybody else is moving on their own. That's how Brian Still presented that, but people gonna run that for whatever reason in their own type of way. So Brian Still brings up Durk being emotionally sent all of this shit, because Durk isn't the one sending this shit. He's been the one sent all of this shit about about King Von death, about Lil Tim being arrested, about all this shit. It's not Durk that's actually sending this stuff out. So that gets basically thrown into the fray. Then the dude says, yeah, it did have a negative effect on him, like it would anybody. So Brian Still basically say, Quando Rondo and them laughing at him, they doing all this shit. They mimicking killing Lil Durk. They doing all this stuff. So when the shoe was on the other foot, Lil Durk never jumped online like Quando Rondo and his crew did. And when Brian Still did that shit, bro, it was like, oh. So if you believe in karma and all that, then that's literally karma right there. Because Brian Still is right. Y'all was trolling the shit out of King Von. You remember Quando Rondo jumping on Clubhouse saying, man, we want to play Call of Duty. Trolling Varney and all these cats and all this shit. They all end up getting offline with him. So I don't want to hear people act like Quando Rondo is such a damn victim. Y'all killed King Von. Y'all trolled the shit out of everybody. They never said anything for a while. The video that Lil Durk shot, he never even put it out. And it was about Lil Durk killing Lil Tim. So did Brian Still basically say, what do you expect these people to think? And his ass was quiet. He said, I swear to God, it was like 2 minutes went past when Brian Still said, so when the shoe was on the other foot, you never brought that shit up. So this is your own illustration. What do you expect people to think? Silent as hell. Brian Still saying, I'll move along. He says some shit like, I've impregnated, some type of shit. I don't remember what the hell it was, but he says, I'll move along. So Brian Still says, he's not on house arrest, he's on curfew, talking about Lil Tim. And he said, you know, when you're on bond, your address is public record. Dude say, yeah, remember when Young Thug got put on probation, Brian Still specifically asked for, what the hell's his name? For Jeffrey to freaking not have his address public when he hits Florida, and that was granted. And then what ends up happening, Brian Still proceeds to destroy dude. Brian Still say, you know this is all public record? Dude say, yeah. So then Brian Still say, how many shootings happened at that address? Dude say, none. Brian Still say, did anybody do anything to Lil Tim? Dude say, no. Brian Still say, did anything ever happen to Lil Tim? Dude say no. So then the video with Angela Yee is brought up, and Brian Still basically say, when King Von died, it was months ago. when Quando Rondo did his damn interview and the damn video of him killing Lil Durk in that video. He said, you got the video of Quando Rondo killing Lil Durk. That's how he said that shit. The dude say, yeah. Boy, he was getting turned every way but loose when the first damn thing happened, because we go on break and dude's whole demeanor changes. But Lil Durk's number, basically, Lil Durk number was on many people, so they changed their numbers for many reasons. They talk about the phone number being changed for a bunch of reasons and all this shit, and that it was changed 17 times from 2018 to 2024. To me, bro, that's not really a freaking problem. So it is what it is. And talk about Jam phone that they had was on May 3rd and it was given up by him. And Brian still was sneaking in this whole theory of Jam saying that, oh, I went to my kid and dropped my kid off the day I talked to Durk. And Brian still like, wait, can y'all prove that to GPS? And dude basically was like, nah, we can't do that. And they say that Jam gave up the cell phone, his own damn self. Like he just voluntarily gave it up. So they talk about phone towers and all this shit. And even if your phone is on silent, you can still have towers. It's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, a bunch of boring shit. Then they talk about the tour being canceled from Lil Durk having that malfunction that hit him in his eye. And basically, I don't think, this is my personal opinion, I don't think the don't book no flights in my name thing is actually a good argument for the feds anymore. Because literally, they dumbasses, I see Trap Lil Ross say this bullshit. Oh, you know, that could be some type of thing where you're speaking in code. Do you think Brian Steele, $1 million fucking lawyer, would bring up some shit in code without knowing what the hell it was? It turns out, yeah, there was a wedding in Cabo. You know what I'm saying? So, no. Dude still believes that text was about murder, and Brian still brought that up, that's what he believes. And then Brian still said they booked flights the day before, read the message, still booked under the name. They ignored the orders. And then do like, well, they made him in a rush. Right. But this is after the break. So what he's doing is he's basically saying, oh, they booked the flights in a rush and all of this shit on the same thing. But the other flights that were booked previously weren't done in a rush. It's straight up bullshit when he's saying that stuff. So I would have had him define what rush is, because DD lawyer, bruh, he beats the living hell out of this damn token, man. So Brian still say when Durk flies business, he brings his people. They talk about the wedding. Did you see bookings for Jay to Cabo and not some coded language? I put that in there. He said, yeah, we knew about the flights. So y'all knew about the flights to Cabo, bruh. That's just straight up bullshit, because the flights were what? Not booked in his name. Don't book no flights under my name was about Cabo the whole entire time. So they talk about King Von living with Vonnie, and Vonnie had access to King Von's cards. They say Vonnie wasn't cousins with King Von, but their fathers were close, so they looked at each other's cousins. And basically that Lil Durk took Vonnie up under his wing and basically made him a manager. And Vonnie was using King Von's cards. Vonnie was using Lil Durk's cards. So there's a group text warning that Jam is telling, and Durk is telling others, you know, basically, don't rock with him and nothing like that. He's out snitching and all this stuff. And then Brian still says, you know, people tell to get out. Dudes say, I've had good-hearted snitches, and people snitch because they have a guilty conscience. And then dudes say, you heard Jam was a cold-blooded killer. This dumbass gonna say, I take people at their word. Brian still says, does a person have to be comfortable when they tell the truth? Because the dude say, people start telling when they get comfortable. And it's like, bro, you don't have to be comfortable to tell the goddamn truth. So Brian still points to the fact that the cops that were recording all of this shit, they were just writing reports. They weren't typing away and doing all this shit. So Brian still is really showing him being combative. And then Brian still has like this shit where they're recording Jam talking, but they like, he didn't start talking to the 5th time y'all met. Then the dude goes on to say, oh, tell me how it's done and why. Like he goes on to tell why it's done and why. He starts making up this weird ass thing where, oh, we can only do shit on the fly with a witness and all that. But then later reveals that the marshals won't have that person ready until 24 hours from then. And that's important because he literally says later on, but the marshal said we want 48 hours before you actually request for a person that y'all want to talk to. Because there's this whole thing where Didi's lawyer puts straight belt to ass on him terribly. He was cooking. It was crazy in there. But he basically say, what's the best way to record? They say depends on the timing, when we're in that and all that stuff. But then Brian still say, so y'all was scheduled? He say, yeah. But it's best that y'all had to have the damn shit recorded, right? And dude says it depends. And Brian still says, okay, let's talk about body cams then. You do know that body cams are basically there to, he wanted the dude to say transparency, but he wasn't gonna get that shit up. And basically, Brian still goes on to say, you know, cops have covered up crimes and all this stuff. Basically talking about the implementation of body cams. Like, y'all won't record meetings with snitches, but cops got to walk around here with body cams because cops used to do written reports because some cops were committing crimes. And dude gonna say it has happened instead of just saying, yeah. This is after the break, so now he knows to be combative. He went into that room and talked with these people, bro. And then 90 days after Jam started snitching, that's when Durk sent the text to everybody like, hey, this dude telling. And then the dude says, no, Brian still says, it's known that Jam was talking and that they could have sent rats to Durk before he even knew it. 90 days before, meaning Jam could have got on the wire or the phone and talked with Lil Durk because Durk didn't know Jam was snitching until 90 days afterwards. So the dude say, yeah, it could have happened, but it just depends. And then says, if Jam got Durk to stuff snitch, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be a good thing for y'all? And the dude gonna say, it depends. If he would have said, oh, well, he could mess up and get entrapment or some shit like that, then he should have said that, but he didn't say that. So Brian still goes on to say, man, you know, there are rats who got people arrested falsely. And dude says, depends on the case. Then Brian still says, but it has happened. And that shit got quiet as hell. He's like, yeah. So basically, Brian still brings up that Apple lets people delete text after 30 days and they have apps that delete stuff. And this damn dude says literally not when they're accused of heinous crimes out loud. Brian still like, who said that? The dude says the facts and the evidence. And Brian still says, so you don't have a bias or interest in the case, dude? Like, I'm doing this for justice and blah, blah, blah. I start trying to sound like a damn Boy Scout and all this shit. It just sounded crazy as hell. And Brian still brings up Exhibit 124. That's a get back text. And it was sent on the November 23rd, 2022. And they try to argue it's about a song. Dude, like, I don't know a song called Get Back. Then Brian still basically shows that Malcolm Chris died. I didn't know that shit, man. He didn't make the trip and all this stuff. And they bring up that King Von edited his picture with Lil Durk. So we don't know the original saying of that shit. And they talk about 31 meetings with Jam and only 4 of those meetings were recorded. Vonnie 10 times, 6 of those meetings were recorded. And then Jones had 3 interviews. None of those were recorded. And that's basically that. But Didi lawyer got on there and started beating the shit out of dude. I mean, it was Holyfield in there. Because Didi lawyer said 302 is not a transcript. It's actually only notes. And then he brings up when the FBI basically said, we want y'all to start video recording this shit. And it happened in July of 2014. And their policy is about all the statements. And just because it doesn't say mandatory, it says strongly, right? And the dude started acting like he never read this shit. So then they bring up how long he has to train when he gets trained. And dude like, bro, that's 20 to 22 weeks. So he starts talking about policies and all this shit. And then that's when he catches him. He literally says, bruh, there's only one policy. Then the dude says, yeah, I didn't know about that policy. Then he admits he worked in Chicago for 7 years. And then they find out May 8, 2023, that's when Jam started telling. And then the attorney says the recording protects the officers. Then dude says it's strongly encouraged to record, but it ain't the policy. So then dude says the FBI owns all of their recording equipment. Dude says, yeah, but it's when it's available. And the attorney says, you have your own, right? And dude say, yeah. And then the attorney says, you're supposed to know all the cases. And dude say, yeah, but I wasn't in the beginning. So then he goes, you review what's said. And then Token says, yeah, but it wasn't in the beginning. Then Diddy lawyer says, y'all met with Diddy in Chicago. So y'all flew from Chicago to LA without y'all equipment? And he literally says, I wasn't on the team. So he says, so y'all didn't pick up anything? Dude say, no. Obviously didn't pick up anything because it wasn't recorded. So Diddy lawyers say, y'all did interviews in LA? Because you can see it's kind of going off the rails. Like he's trying to act like, oh, I don't know. I didn't know what happened in all this shit and everything. So he like, yeah. They say people live in different places. It could take 2 hours to 15 minutes to basically get to the office in LA. But y'all still need 24 hours to 48 hours to even get the damn witness from the jail. So that's insane for you to even say that shit. And it's like, you mean if you tell me 15 minutes you get there, you can't be the person to get the recording device? Because y'all all supposed to have them. And he basically brings that up because he say, you can't just pull up to the damn building and say, hey man, y'all bring them here now. It doesn't work that way. And the damn lawyer, he says, you didn't record the shit because you didn't want to. And he said, oh, that's not my method. I like to type. And he closed it with this. He say, all the reports, the lawyer says, all the reports that are given that y'all write with, they are given weeks later. And a guy says, well, that's because certain guys, they lead to, like myself, I go to Chicago and I go to New Orleans a lot and all this stuff. And it's like, bruh, you full of shit. But part 2 coming on later.